Peace. This your host, Sila Shalom, and this is the Cosmon Teachings in the words of Jehovah and his angel ambassadors from the Cosmon Bible Owaspi. And the topic of discussion today is going to be called the 24 Etherian Gods, or the 24 Elders. And these 24 Etherian Gods are high-raised angels who manage the earth and its heaven for a period of 3,000 years, called arc cycles, and hence the name archangels, because these are angels who are stationed in the arcs, as the earth passes through them every 3,000 years or one arc cycle. And then after 3,000 years or one arc cycle, another group of Etherians or elders manage the earth and its heaven for the next period of 3,000 years. Just as we on earth have kings and presidents that reign for a period of time managing the kingdom during his or her reign, then after a new king or president succeeds and manages the kingdom in his or her way, so is it with the elders in the management of worlds. The Etherian gods manage the earth and its heaven for a period of 3,000 years and set up an administration for the earth and its heaven for the course of that 3,000 years. Then another Etherian group sets up the next administration for the next 3,000 years, with new invention for humans on earth. And these Etherians are responsible for the development and advancement of humans on earth. And these Etherian angels are in service of Jehovah, the Creator. And in the synopsis of 16 cycles, chapter 1, verse 3 and 4, it states how the Etherians manage over worlds. It states, verse 3, during a cycle, the earth and her heavens fall in the Etherian regions of hundreds of Etherian worlds, where dwell Jehovah's high-raised angels, whose chief have to do with the management of worlds. Verse 4. During the time of a cycle, the earth is therefore under the control and management of such of Jehovah's angels for the resurrection of man on earth. So here it clearly states that the earth and its heavens are under the control of these Etherian gods during an arc cycle of 3,000 years. They're here to help advance the human race in development and growth, just as we develop our children as they grow, and as they grow they are introduced to new things. Likewise with the Etherian gods. They are like parents to a world in the human development. Now, the reason there are 24 elders is because the earth has passed through 24 arcs and have been visited 24 times by the Etherian host. And every 3,000 years or one arc cycle is when they come. So 24 arc cycles of 3,000 years is a total of 72,000 years, which makes a half age, the half of the inhabitable time for humans on earth, the ETHTEREAN age. And I explained that in the documentary called The ETHTEREAN Age and the Orbit of the Solar System. So you could check for that to get a better understanding. Now in the Cosmon Bible Owaspi, it gives the names of the 24 Etherian gods, the years they reigned, and the names of the arc cycles of whence they came from the creation of man to the present. And in the book of synopsis of 16 cycles, chapter 1, verse 5 through 33, it gives the arc records of these Etherian gods, starting with the Etherian god Sententes. And in the book of synopsis of 16 cycles, chapter 1, verse 5 through 9, it gives you an example of the ranks and titles of these Etherians. Verse 5, it states, at the creation of man, the earth was traveling in the arc of Wain, where dwelt thousands of Orion chiefs with thousands of millions of high-raised angels. Verse 6, the holy council of Orion chief, through the wisdom and voice of Jehovah, appointed one of their number, Sententes, to take charge of the earth and to people it with immortal beings during its travel in Wain. Verse 7, the rank and title of Sententes thus raised up by Jehovah, creator of worlds, was first God of the earth and her heaven. Verse 8, and Sententes came with millions of angels who had been raised up from other worlds previous, and he accomplished his work and was known as God. Verse 9. Sententes was then the first god of the earth and her heavens, and his place was within the ark of Wain. And during his cycle of 3,000 years, he raised up from the earth 1,500 million brides and bridegrooms to Jehovah. So that's just an example of the ranks and title of these ETHTEREANS. So Sententes was the first ETHTEREAN god to rule the earth and her heaven after the creation of man. So now we have a starting point. So now I'm going to run down the rest of the names, years, and arc cycles that these ETHTEREANS ruled. So I just gave you the first ETHTEREAN god who ruled after the creation of man, named Sententes, and he ruled for a period of 3,000 years, and he came when the earth entered the ark of Wain. Now, the second ETHTEREAN god after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Ashang, and he reigned for 3,000 years, and he came when the earth entered the ark of Vihitiva. And the third ETHTEREAN god to reign after the creation of man was Holi, and he reigned for 3,000 years, and he came in the third arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Gamel. The fourth ETHTEREAN god to rule the earth and its heaven after the creation of man was Sipiabin, and he ruled for 3,000 years, and he came in the fourth arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Yan. The fifth ETHTEREAN god to rule after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Pathodais, and he ruled for 3,000 years, and he came in the fifth arc cycle after the creation of man, in the ark of Yahomatic. And the sixth ETHTEREAN god to rule after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god was Goi Magat, and he ruled for 3,000 years and came in the sixth arc cycle after the creation of man, and he came in the ark of Samguatka. And the seventh ETHTEREAN god after the creation of man, Go Apines, and he reigned for 3,000 years, and he came in the seventh arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Shrivat. And the eighth ETHTEREAN god who came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Haisi, and he ruled for 3,000 years, and he came in the eighth arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Hohamagalak. And the ninth ETHTEREAN god who came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Itzisius, and he ruled for 3,000 years and came in the ninth arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Jasin. And the 10th ETHTEREAN goddess that came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN goddess Mesolativa, and she ruled for 3,000 years. And she came in the 10th arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Nu. And it is within this arc cycle, the 10th arc at the beginning, that the first era of civilization took place. And this would be equivalent to 43,000 BCE. The 11th ETHTEREAN god that came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Gobath, and he reigned for 3,000 years. And he came in the 11th arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Suli. Now the 12th ETHTEREAN god that came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Phayas, and he ruled for 3,000 years and came in the 12th arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Sayin. The 13th ETHTEREAN god that came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Zenithius, and he reigned for 3,000 years and came in the 13th arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Oliganya. And the 4th ETHTEREAN god that came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Tothsintka, and he reigned for 3,000 years and came in the 14th arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Manichu. Now the 15th ETHTEREAN god that came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Nemeus, and he reigned for 3,000 years, and he came in the 15th arc after the creation of man, the arc cycle of Saiga. And the 16th ETHTEREAN god that came after the creation of man was the ETHTEREAN god Neph, and he reigned for 3,000 years, and he came in the 16th arc cycle after the creation of man, the ark of Abruk. And now the 17th arc cycle after the creation of man was the Etherian god Eighth. And he reigned for 3,000 years. And he came in the 17th arc cycle after the creation of man, which is the Ark of Noah. And it is the 17th arc when the flood took place, the flood of waters, or the deluge. This took place within the